Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the June 26, 2025 Planning Board meeting. I'd like to start by asking for a motion to open the meeting that will serve as attendance, and so if we could add your name to it as we vote. Can I have a motion, please? Can I have a second? Second by Steve. Motion made by Bill. All right, and we'll start with the vote. Phil, aye? All right. Rob, can you kick us off here? And where are we going tonight?
All right. Good evening, everybody. So tonight we have, it's a one-item agenda, which is for the New England Country Club special permit. Essentially, the update, just so the board is aware, so we do have a new member, Marty, welcome, all the way at the end. So with that, when we have a new member and there's an active application in front of the board, the applicant has the right to renotice and re-advertise for their project. And all that does is get the full, or get the member to be a part of the full voting quorum. What needs to happen as part of that too is the applicant needs to give an update in a public hearing to basically state where the application started and where they're at right now. And I imagine the applicant probably has some updates as well. But essentially tonight is going to be a night probably for the high level overview to get Marty up to speed as a new voting member. And then any other additional updates. So that's what I have.
Quick question, Rob. Did we get anything new in our from the applicant, or is this all review tonight? All review?
Yeah, we haven't had anything.
So, okay. Just wanted to make sure we were understanding that going into this conversation. All right, so we were going to do traffic tonight. Sounds like that's off the table, other than discussing and bringing us back up to speed with Marty being here. At this point, I'll turn it over to the applicant.
Great. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you to members of the board, and welcome to Mr. Roach. And Rob, thank you for your introduction. First and foremost, I want to thank all the members of the public who have been taking a lot of time out of their personal schedule for many, many months now to spend the time at these meetings. I know we've had a handful of other meetings with direct abutters, and we've walked through their yards, and we're very grateful for all of the feedback we've received from all of the stakeholders. And again, we look forward to continuing to work and maintain an open dialogue. I think Something that myself and I can represent for our team is we certainly have heard a lot of the feedback over the past 6 to 12 months, and particularly the feedback that's been provided in the meetings in this room, the meeting we had at the middle school, and other discussions along the way, along with all of the stakeholders at the town level, both elected and staff. So we have really taken an earnest approach to hear the feedback and to listen to the feedback. And again, we'll go through a little bit of the history of the project quickly, and then talk about, and Mr. Chairman, there's not anything new in terms of, but I will say there are some kind of reductions on the plan that we have shown previously. And if that's accurate, Rob. Yeah. So just for starters, I will say, one of the items that we've heard is that this was meant, that the community wants it to look and feel like a gated community that is a little more residential in fabric, that has a variety of different heights. We have worked to modify a lot of the design of the buildings. Some will be 1-story, 2-story, 3-story, 4-story, 5-story, but it'll be different than what we have presented in previous meetings. I think as there's still a lot of work to do on the design side, I think this is, this image here is one that is meant to be emblematic and representative of, one portion of the site. And we are continuing to work through to kind of redesign each building to look and feel a little bit more smaller in scale and more approachable. I think if we, this just to again reorient everybody with the property itself, it's approximately 340 acres, kind of from the west to the east. As everybody can see, there's the existing 18-hole golf course on there now, which, again, based on direction and guidance we've received, we've really endeavored to maintain that as is with a couple minor modifications. And we've really made an effort to disturb as little of the site as possible. At the moment of the 340 acres, we really will only be touching approximately 30 acres of the site. And back in February, this is what was submitted in terms with regards to our initial proposal, the comprehensive plan that was submitted to the planning board. It contemplated 1,600 units in total, 800 units on the western parcel and 800 units on the east. Mike, if we want. This was in May at our last meeting. We had heard a lot of feedback from the folks who live on Gloud Lane that some of the proximities and adjacencies felt a bit too close, and so we reduced the scale on the eastern side from 800 units to 450, and the western parcel at that time was 950 units. Mike, if you want to, so this is our latest proposal in which we have fully removed all of the units to the east. I think this was based on a lot of feedback that we received from people in this room. It's also based on feedback that we heard from police and fire and public safety with regards to accessing and egressing that portion of the site. And this is something that we heard a lot of the folks in this room from all different adjacencies to the property. And again, a desire not to disturb the kind of existing wooded conditions there. So this was a very major change. It's something we've been working closely on for the past 4 weeks or so since our last meeting. And hopefully, again, with regards to all of the impacts, this is something that will very much lessen the impacts of the overall project. On the western portion, Mike, if you want to go back for a minute, on the western portion, we've reduced it from 950 units to 900 units. Again, that was based on feedback we received at our meeting in May in this room, as well as some ongoing discussions with abutters. We still have some work to do on this side, on the west side. Again, we, among the different dynamics here, one is that almost all of the land we will be touching is generally already considered disturbed, meaning it is, the trees have already been removed many years ago. It's generally flat and level, so there will be a lot less earthwork, virtually no blasting in any material way. And we also, in this, and just as before, but even more so in this revised plan, there will be no disturbance to wetlands. Something that we, again, one of the reasons we reduced the number was based on some of the feedback we received from all of the residents on Payne Street. Payne Street is something that we have spent a lot of time on, you know, both over the past year, but particularly over the past 6 to 8 weeks, based on all of the, you know, direct feedback and experience for those who live on Payne Street that has been shared with us. You know, as Rob alluded to, this tonight is a general meeting. We wanted to share this update with you. And from a statutory procedural standpoint, you know, it was important for the new board member that we present the whole project. The next meeting that we will hold will be traffic focused and, you know, really with a primary focus on Payne Street. We have heard a lot of the concerns in this room, and we have been working to further enhance and improve how that will all be handled on Payne Street. So, and there's a peer review underway with the town of Bellingham. That they have engaged a peer review on the traffic engineering side. So this is where the project stands now. We still have some specifics to work through on the western side, but for a project that started at 1,600 units and was very different in terms of the character and texture and design of the buildings, and whether it was their size, their scale, their contemporary design, we really have endeavored to reduce that by nearly half, down to 900 units. We've heard a lot of the concerns on some of the existing nature, some of the existing flora and fauna, again, with a real deference to the wetlands, and ultimately break down the scale of the buildings so that they feel more contextual, more New England, more residential, more gated community. Mike, if you want to, this just summarizes what we just went through from the 1,600 units down to the 900 units. And Mike, if you want to, and that's, you know, and otherwise, we really want to just make ourselves available tonight for discussion. Again, we're here, we've been here to listen. We appreciate the feedback, the direct feedback. It really has helped shape our vision and our perspective, and we still have more work to do. But we hope that these changes have demonstrated a willingness to listen and engage in good faith. And so with that, you know, and I want to thank the board and Mr. Lucier, and I'll turn it back over to the chairman.
A couple questions for Rob on this before we go much further. Number one, the concept we just saw, do we have plans for this yet? We don't have plans at this point. Okay. Traffic, do peer review. Has that been funded yet? Let me give you the microphone.
Yeah. Thank you, because that warrants a little bit longer of an answer than yes or no. So the traffic peer review has not been funded yet. We have engaged with the traffic peer review consultant. We have the proposal. And there was an addendum submitted to the traffic report for the western side that was submitted. It's been a little while, I think, since that one was submitted. But essentially, now that the scope has been reduced, we want to make sure that whatever the peer reviewer is looking at is going to be in line with what's proposed. So I would urge the applicant to fund the peer review so we can get started, because we got to get going with that. This is going to be difficult.
Yeah, it's going to be difficult. Sorry, apologize to the audience. So once it's funded, Rob, what type of time frame would you expect that our peer review would be ready to take a first look and get back to us?
I would say approximately about a month time I would give for the peer reviewer to look and submit a report, and that report and review will be on our website. That's all going to be public knowledge as well. And then we will discuss it in the public hearing.
All right, before I turn it over for a couple questions from the board first, just from the audience, can I have a show of hands of people that have been here in the past? So I'm seeing the majority. There are some new people, but the majority. Thank you. Thank you for participating. So, and I would urge you to continue to participate, all of you. Let me turn this to the board first. And maybe Liz, I'll start down at your side. I'm not sure there's going to be questions because we've got really no new information right now. But is there anything you'd like to bring up right now?
No, I don't have any questions. I do think that hopefully everyone appreciates the reduction in density to the project, but right now I think most of my questions will come when we get into the details of traffic and stormwater and all that.
Yeah, I'm going to go back to the first meeting. I think this is a little large right now. This is not what we approved when it came to the town meeting several years ago. So I think there's still some more work to do. I'd like to look at how these buildings look like. Ideally, the first proposal we received for this, I think was it 5 or 7 years ago, is something we all liked in town, and I'd like to see if we can migrate back to that as best we can. And again, I've not had a chance to look into the details, so I'll reserve my questions for later on.
And I'll pass this down to Marty. And Marty, I know you were in the audience both times, but now you're up on the board. Welcome.
Thank you. It's a step in the right direction, going from the 16 down to 9, but as Bill, and I'm going to echo a little bit of his sentiment, it's not what was proposed during town meeting and how we were going to progress with the overlay. So, and I would love to see more of a mix, true mix of what was originally proposed. 900 units in 7 buildings, 900 buildings within 7 buildings. That's an awful lot of density still with that, and still all coming out to Payne Street. I also want the details on the DPW, water, sewer, how we're getting rid of the sewer in terms of pump stations and things of that nature. There's a lot of details still yet to come, along with now the traffic study and then public safety. So right now I think we're moving better, but I still think it needs to move more.
Well, I guess since we're still on the high view level here, I'll mention a couple of things that are still a problem for me. Even with this being at 900 units, it's still over twice the size of the largest proposal that has come to Bellingham for residential use. And the one word that, and Phil and Bill knows, the one word that gives me great pause when development comes to Bellingham, it's the word mitigation. And so we're all on the same page. I just wrote down the definition of mitigation, and I'll get to what I'm getting at here in a second. It's basically the process of lessening the force or intensity of something unpleasant or harmful. It can involve reducing the severity or seriousness or painfulness of an event, condition, or consequence. And in essence, it's about making a bad situation less bad. Bellingham has had its share of development in this town that has required all kinds of mitigation, none of which has eliminated these effects. They've reduced them somewhat. And when I've looked at all of the development that's come into Bellingham, Andrew, and looked at the mitigation that's taken place, basically what we've been left with is a town that we've had self-inflicted traffic issues. We've prematurely aged our infrastructure. We've stressed out our resources, and we've chipped away at the very character of our community. And this project is the motherlode of all mitigation. So this brings me great pause even before we get to all the individual areas that we've got to look at. I guess the one thing that we can't change that is a problem for me is that I don't think 900 units belongs in an area that has to have access on and off of Payne Street. It's just, and I said this last month, it's not a street that's designed or can be mitigated to the point where I think it can reasonably take care of 900 units without it causing some serious issues. But in the end, the last thing I'll say is this. When the overlay was done, and this has been mentioned already, it was done because, and it was approved because the people of the town thought there were going to be a project that involved 400 and some odd, was it townhouses, Rob? But they were townhouses, and they were, yeah, okay. But there was 400 and change. So I question whether or not the town would have voted for an overlay if they knew that this was the project that was being presented. So I don't think it's fair for the town to be able to swallow something like this when it wasn't anything like this presented during the overlay. So that's where I'm at. This gives me great pause. I appreciate what you're doing, but trimming the tree a little bit and standing back to see, where it looks best, I don't think it's going to work. I think you've got to look at what was originally proposed and start there. Because anything above that, I think you're going to have pushback, and I think justifiably so. Okay, and that's, it only has to do with the project, has nothing to do with you or the company, strictly the project.
I appreciate the feedback,
Okay.
and we will continue to work on that.
So speaking as a member, I think I've sat here a couple times already and gone through a long list of concerns, which I know you've taken notes on. They're still all relevant. Rentham Road is probably a little bit better now, but you still got the Rentham Road flows right into the same place Payne Street does in some cases. So we'll certainly get to that when we get to traffic and the other topics. Definitely concerned about the impact on the town services, which I've commented on, the town resources, the schools, et cetera, et cetera. Mentioned ambulance service is a perfect example in the 2.5 override. So we'll continue going there. I don't think I'm going to go through all the fine detail that I've done in the past as a member, but they're still all issues. So I'll leave it there. At this point, I know that a lot of the members of the audience have been here before. I know they've given a lot of input, but I don't think we should have a meeting without input from the town and the residents that have shown up, whether you're a Bellingham resident or a resident from one of our neighbors. Welcome, everyone. So if there's somebody here that would like to come to the podium and make a public comment, please identify yourself. You can form the lines on both sides and we'll take, yes please. Please identify yourself with your name and address for the record that we'll of course capture, and
Sure.
love to hear from you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Wayne Poitras, Arthur Street, down south past Crooks Corner. Thank you, gentlemen, for mentioning about the traffic study. My question might be a little premature, but something has to definitely be reconfigured, because as it is now, when I go down Payne Street, I am stuck between Elbow Street and Country Club, because I need to take a left at Crooks Corner, and everybody currently is going right towards Rentham Road and right towards the center of town. So I'll be at every other meeting. I apologize for missing the first meetings, but that's a serious thought because Payne Street is the worst street in Bellingham as far as accidents go. Because people come flying over the top of the hill from Woonsocket, and they're in the middle lane already as the other people are trying to make it up the hill. So I don't know what your plan is for, I mean, I'm assuming all of that area would have to be restructured, make Payne Street wider, and reconfigure Crooks Corner. I'm not sure if the planning department is considering that also. Because again, the traffic right now is horrible, and I think you need to reach out to more than the Payne Street people. Yes, they're down south, but the people at Crooks Corner that are further down south feel it much harder than those people. I think so, anyway. And as far as the traffic study, I would save your money. Because I've been involved in 2 big traffic studies, and they're both jokes. I did it with the car wash at the top of my street. Had this huge, massive traffic study. Again, it was a joke. So I would save your money on that, and it's not up to me to decide that. It's up to the board here to decide that. But it's a waste. But again, my only big concern, and I know you're going to talk about water later, my only big concern is the traffic as it currently is, and what would happen with this enormous amount of 55-plus drivers. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, sir. Can I ask a show from the audience of people that share that concern? And I see the majority do. So we'll put that one down on the list as the majority here, and we'll try not to hit the same topic over and over again, but certainly want to get input. So we'll go to this side. With
Mr. Chairman, I just want to, Wayne, I appreciate you coming tonight, and I just want to reiterate, we don't have it all solved yet, but we agree that the most acute issue is the traffic on Payne Street and in, the surrounding areas. And would be happy to get your information. Would love to meet with you and maybe even drive with you at different times of day, understand exactly. And I think as much as, yes, there are professional traffic engineers involved, myself and my team are civilians and would like to just understand it from kind of an everyday perspective. And again, we may not have a magic wand to solve every element of it, but I want you to know that we're taking it seriously. So thanks for your time.
Thank you. And I'll make one other point on that, is that when I asked the question about peer review on the traffic study being funded, what that was really asking them was the question, we have traffic study engineers that represent the town that they pay for to represent the town, and the peer review works for us and gives us direction on peer review. So when I asked the question, have they funded it yet, that was, have they funded the town side of things on that, just to clarify. So at this point, I'll turn the mic over to the other side.
Hi, my name is Michelle Champeau. I live at 90 Payne Street. And as a resident of Payne Street, I am well aware of the traffic issues. It's quite dangerous trying to get in and out of my driveway, which is directly across from Gaby Lane. I stopped to pull into my driveway, and people are actually beeping behind me because they're mad that I stopped. I do want to thank the Bellingham Police Department, though. They have had a huge presence on Payne Street in the last week or two and have stopped multiple people speeding on Payne Street. So I do want to say thank you for that. You mentioned in one of your plans about a traffic light. which would be put at, I think, 80 Payne Street, which is the next house over from me, as a way to try and mitigate traffic issues. And the more I thought about that, like initially I was like, yeah, I think that's a great idea, but the more I thought about that, the more I thought, I am never gonna be able to get in and out of my driveway if there's a traffic light there. So I just wanted to enter that into the record, because while it could solve some traffic problems, I think it will create other traffic problems. And then, you know, as a last comment, and this will be a laugh for people in the audience, but occasionally I get golf balls in my backyard, if you can believe it. Yeah, I do. I thought I gave you my number and I thought you might call me for a visit, and I actually kept a golf ball in my yard for a couple of weeks until my landscaper moved it. But I wanted to show that to you. So my last question is, how are you going to keep these residents, how are you going to, will there be golf ball damage? How are you going to mitigate that? Yeah, I know, I thought it would be a laugh for you all, so just a little lighthearted comment, right?
Thank you for your comment.
And that's it.
Okay. Let me ask the question then. So the traffic light on Payne Street, how many people here have concerns about that with a show of hands? And again, I see the majority, so we'll go from there.
Mr. Chair, sorry, I want to be respectful of everyone's time, but and Michelle, thank you for coming again tonight, and I appreciate it. And I'll say I haven't quite thought through the on-property golf ball mitigation, other than trying to screen the type of golfers that are coming through. But I will say we would, and again, I'm not saying this just to say it. We are humans at the end of the day. I appreciate what you're saying in terms of even today, and I think something, as we've spent time there, there are challenges on Payne Street today as is, and that's nobody's fault other than just the way roads and towns evolve over time. And we hope that we could, ultimately we hope we could leave it better than we found it today through, there's a lot of thoughtful engineering in other ways. So we're not here to talk about that tonight. And we would, forgive us. I know we've met with a lot of different neighbors and abutters. I'm sorry that we haven't had a chance to get together yet, but Mark and I will reach out to you tomorrow. So thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Can I turn it over to the lady?
Not sure if this is going to, yeah, this is,
You were fine just there when we could hear you. Perfect.
Very short. That's not, it's very high. That's better, right? So I apologize looking at my phone, but I have notes to refer to. So I'm Jen Russo. I'm at 62 High Ridge Road in Bellingham. A lot of the issues that everyone's been talking about really come down to the topic of population. So I decided to just kind of look at that a little bit. The traffic, the resources, the noise, the services, all of that is population. And while I am glad that this has reduced in scope, I still think it's too many people, just in general. And I did pull some numbers. So right now, Bellingham's population is estimated at around 17,836 people. In 2020, when the census was done, it was 16,945 people. So it's only gone up 5% in 5 years. And what you're proposing is, even if you have 900 units, if it's double occupancy, you're talking about 1,800 people. That's another 10 to 12% in population growth in a very short amount of time, when it took us 5 years to get 5%, and actually 25% in 45 years. That's how long it's taken to go 25% increase. So to have another 10 to 12 or even more percentage, even with 900 units, is a huge amount to ask a very small town. So thank you.
Thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
So if I can ask the audience, population growth, resources, and town services, how many people in the audience agree that those are concerns here? And again, I see the majority. Thank you. And we'll come back over to this side.
Good evening. My name is Fred Milgram, 703 Village Lane. It's also a 55 and older community. We just added 18 units to what was 48. We're now 66. and we see ambulances at least once a week, during the winter, 3 or 4 times a week. That's a lot of traffic through a very small area. My main concerns, though, are, excuse me, I'm 82 years old and I talk a little slow, but I think pretty rationally, I think. So anyway, there's outdoor parking for people 55 and older. We have people in our community that have been 90 years old. They have since passed, but we have a whole group of 80-year-olds. They have trouble walking. They have trouble doing anything physical. That's why we moved into a condo. All the planting is done by the I can't think of the word. The association, thank you. We are restricted from cleaning cars in our own driveway by physical disabilities. I see on your plan, people have to walk out of the building after coming down how many stories they are up, come down and clean snow off their car and drive over hills in that area, which 55 and older people are prone to not be as agile as a 20-year-old. There's a lot of physical drawbacks. If there was a store in there or a pharmacy, that would alleviate some of these problems. You know, like a convenience store or whatever necessities that people generally use. That would keep them off the road. It would lessen the traffic. But you're going to see 900 moving trucks in a short period of time over Bellingham roads. You're going to see maintenance trucks forever. You're going to see ambulances and fire trucks, because wherever the ambulance goes, a fire truck and sometimes a squad car follows them. And those roads are not wide enough for an ambulance and a fire truck to go in one direction while traffic is trying to flow. There's no place to move over to let the emergency vehicles through. I could think of a number of other things, but I think those are my main points. Thank you.
Thank you, Fred.
Thank you. So I'm going to ask the question. There's a lot of concerns there, but how many people in the audience share those concerns? And again, I'm going to say the majority. So, and we'll turn it over to this side.
Hi, my name is Lauren Hummel. I live at 10 Janet Avenue, not too far from where this proposal is proposed. And you said something tonight that I haven't heard before.
If you could just a little closer.
My best.
Thank you.
I can be
Appreciate
shorter.
it. I'm doing the same thing here, so thank you.
You used the term gated community. I haven't heard that before tonight. Gated community. This gentleman is concerned about the older folks, and I'm concerned about the younger folks who might live in these 55-plus theoretical places. They're not condos, they're apartments, and the amount of rent that we saw in the last meeting would be prohibitive of most of the people in this room. Thank you.
Thank you. There's a lot of clapping there, but I'll ask the question. How many people agree with that that's going to be a concern? And I'll say the majority again. Thank you. I'll turn it over to this side.
Hi, I'm Samantha. I live on 31 Rome Ave. Sorry. I live on Rome Ave, which is off of Fairway, which is the street at the top of Payne Street. And I just wanted to mention something that I'm concerned about in regards to if you put a light at the bottom of Payne Street. You can't see, like, turning on and off of Fairway is really scary because you can't see what's coming up at the hill. And tractor trailer trucks are going down that street all the time. And so my big concern is if you put a light down there, they're going to come over that hill and not see traffic until it's too late for them to stop, and it's just going to cause accidents, and people are going to get hurt. So that's my big thing, and I just wanted to make sure somebody was thinking about that. So, thank you.
Okay,
I
well,
really
thank you.
appreciate it. Thank you.
And again, the traffic light, I think we talked about that before, but how many people are concerned with the traffic light? And I'm going to say the majority again. So can we go to this side of the room, sir?
Good evening. My name is Chuck Trottier. I'm 81 Pleasant Street. I've been in the town of Bellingham all my life. Traffic is the big concern, obviously. I live on 81 Pleasant Street. It is a cut-through for the corner. With this type of situation, it's just going to press more on traffic coming down South Main Street and cutting through the back. My grandchildren can't even play on the street. The town of Bellingham Police Department's been very good at, they put in a sign for registering the speed of cars. They put in speed humps, and it's helped a very little bit. So traffic, yes, study it all you like, but I agree with Wayne. The Main Street southbound coming into Crook's Corner, or rather that would be northbound, coming down the hill. I remember the time where there was a stop sign at the fire station. They reversed that to make stop sign for Rentham Road and through traffic for Main Street, and it hasn't mitigated anything. We still got it backed up constantly. So I don't feel that that can support this type of atmosphere. I'm astonished at the amount that they had come up with as a second proposal of boosting up the amount of tenants they want to put in this area. My other concern is where the area is for this last plan here was more of storm drain situation, because the houses that are in the back of that area that are closer to Peters River already deal with flooding waters. So if you've got storm water that's now not absorbed by the ground, where is it going to? I'm sure maybe these things were discussed in the past. If they haven't, I'm glad I brought it up tonight. But I will be here for meetings to go forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I appreciate that. I'll ask the question again. How many people share his concerns by show of hands? And I'll say majority as well. One thing I was been just advised of is that microphone over here seems to not be working as well. And so if we could just move all the questions over here, I'd appreciate your indulgence. Thank you. And turn the mic over to the gentleman.
Greg Houghton, 27 Rome Ave. So, Andrew, Mark, thank you for hearing us. I personally think it's not enough still. And I know, Mark, I owe you a phone call. I was on vacation, so I'm sorry. But the big thing I just want to make you all aware of, if you aren't, Walnut Hill has a new grocery store going in, so Payne Street's only going to get worse. Where the Sears location is, there's a new grocery store going there. So any future studies you do or factoring in, I mean, for your tenants, yeah, great for them. They have another grocery store. For us on Fairview, like Sam, it's traffic. So I know we already talked about traffic, but again, be aware, a new grocery store is going in there.
Okay.
Greg,
I think I heard you say that it was not enough of a reduction. So I'll phrase the question that you just stated, and you're shaking your head yes. So how many people in the audience think the reduction is not enough at this point? And I'll say that's the majority again. So thank you, sir.
And Greg, I'll just say thank you for reaching out. And I know we've been trying to get together. I'm glad to hear you were on vacation. And, you know, Mark and I would love to come and meet with you, you know, maybe next week or after the 4th. So thank you.
Sir, thanks for coming out, and let's hear your concern.
My name is Rick Campano, 70 Elbow Street. I have a couple of concerns. One is being noise from this project. And, you know, I wasn't in favor of 800 being there. Now there's 900 being there. And it's kind of ridiculous. But the noise factor is it's right behind my house. I live on the elbow of the Elbow Street. So I'm concerned about that. Drainage back there. I got the swamp in my backyard. And traffic is unbelievable. have a hard time getting out of it. I have to go around by Rentham Road to get out of my street. It's that bad, and they haven't even put any houses there yet. So that's my concerns.
Thank you, sir. And polling the audience, how many people share those concerns? And we'll say the majority.
Rick, if you don't, or sorry.
Jen Izzo, Empire Circle off of Fairway Road. Sorry. Thank you. My concern is, I've lived here for 30 years at the same area, and I can't even count on two hands how many times Payne Street has been closed because of a bad traffic accident. How would you get 900 people in and out of their residence if the road is closed? It looks like you have one way in, one way out at this point. Another concern of mine is the fire station at the corner. We have, a fire truck and one ambulance. That's not going to handle 900 people. That building is not big enough for more than that. I'm concerned that you're not really hearing the residents of Bellingham, that you really took into consideration Rentham over us because you've moved this closer to the people in Bellingham who it's really going to affect.
Thank you.
And of course, I'm going to ask the audience and poll the audience. How many share those concerns? And that's the majority again.
Hi, good evening, thank you. My name is Patty Bishop. I'm at 18 Plymouth Road. And this is actually a question I thought of after one of the last meetings. And I guess it's for the developers. Have you done something like this in other communities, and where has it been?
Yes, I think as we've discussed in the past, there's been a variety of different communities we've been active in. Some which are more urban, some which are more suburban, and some which are, even more rural. And so I think every community has its own unique dynamics. And, really what we've spent our time the past 2 years is just trying to understand how everything from traffic and stormwater and all the different elements kind of function and flow around here. And so, we've kind of taken the mosaic of everything we've done in the past, but tried to understand and apply it here in a very specific way.
Okay. And I'm sorry if I've missed where that has come forward in meetings, but where would I find where your other properties are?
There's been a variety, Marshfield, Quincy. We have been active in Somerville, Brockton. So, but I think something, and again, we've heard the feedback, and we have more work to do. But we are truly endeavoring to make this project contextual, aligned with the original intent, and of scale. And so, we hope we've gone in the right direction. We're not here to say it's perfect tonight, or that we certainly want to continue the conversation, and the feedback received tonight will contribute to that as well.
And would any of that be available to find out sort of the process and community involvement for, against, whatever, to see kind of how you worked with them, with those other communities?
Yeah, I'm sure we could provide that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So I think I'll summarize that as by saying the size of the project in our community. How many people are concerned about that? And again, I'm going to say the majority. Not 100%, but the majority.
We're a town. We're not Somerville. Somerville is huge, like Boston.
Next question, sir.
Chairman, board members, Mr. Lucia, through you, may I ask Mr. Flynn a question, if it's okay?
You may ask it through the board, sir.
That's what I'm asking
That's exactly
permission.
what you did, sir. Yes,
I'm
sir.
asking permission for that.
Yes, sir.
You got it. Thanks. Mr. Flynn, on your proposal, I see that, as I read a lot of the material, you have the right in some future to maybe to exercise a right that where you could expand this project if the board wishes, the New England Country Club. And that concerns me and a lot of members. One of the questions I'm going to propose to you tonight is, Mr. Flynn, are you willing to provide in writing to this board? Tonight you made a proposal that you were listening to some of the people here about the expansion of the property, especially the east end where you went from 800 to whatever it was, 450 down to 0. Are you willing to provide this board in writing that then New England Country Club shall not exercise the right to develop the east parcel, panel, or constraint, or build any residential buildings now or in the future on the east side? Are you willing to put that in writing to the board this evening or within a week period?
I appreciate, the question and the comment. It's something we can take under consideration, something we've talked about, with other stakeholders in recent weeks is how do we ensure that it is 55 plus and that is enforced, that it remains that way, and that there are no, loopholes to turn this, as somebody, kind of put to us last time, into an affordable project or a non-age restricted project. And, I think we can take into consideration different parts of the site. So, I can't make that representation tonight because this project is evolving every day, but it's a living, breathing organism, and I think we understand your concern. And as we seek to assure and establish certainty on things such as the age restriction, the non-affordability, and all of those other elements, we can take that under consideration.
Well, thank you for the answer, but it's not what I was looking for, because what I'm looking for is basically, you said 0 on the east portion. We really would like you to stand by that proposal you showed this evening in good faith. So you're not going to say, I'm going to come back and develop later on. So we're asking a simple form, put it in writing, to say that your word is true, that you will not develop that parcel. Of course, there's other issues. I'm not going to bring that up tonight, as you well know. But it's a start to show good faith if you're willing to do that at that point. This is why I'm bringing this up this evening. Thank you.
Appreciate it. And we will follow up with you on that.
So that's a question that I think I've personally brought up as a member of this board, as far as the permitting of a project and then coming back and developing some more later. So I'll ask the question to the audience: how many people have those concerns as well, as the person just asked? And I see everybody. Well, not the majority do. Majority do. Thank you, sir. Next question, please.
Hi, thank you. Brian Post, 10 Connor Lane in Bellingham. I know one of the board members alluded to DPW services, and I was just wondering what studies are being done on our, water, sewer systems, electric, with all the increase in units. That could be a strain on the grid, especially with the heat we had this week. So are there currently studies being done for that, or plans in place to accommodate that?
Yes. Sorry, Mr. Chairman.
Actually, I'll let you answer that. I was going to turn it over to Rob, but I'll let you answer that.
Well, I don't want to speak for Rob either, but the answer is yes, and I think we appreciate that, those key infrastructure components and elements obviously are critical today, and critical that any additional use of them needs to be properly studied. And, stormwater, as an example, among others, is one we're taking very seriously. We know there are a lot of grade changes on this site. There are a lot of grade changes, as it abuts different folks' backyards. And so there's detailed studies both on our end, and again, something that we will fund the town's engagement of an expert on. And I don't want to, I think probably, later this summer, those studies will be completed, and we'll host a specific meeting, in here just on that topic alone. So it's slightly premature, but it's something that is absolutely critical that, we get right, and we want to share and be fully transparent as we have been to date.
Thank you.
I can offer a little bit more insight too, just to add from the town side. So there will be at least 4 separate types of peer reviews that are done for this project. One of them being the civil/stormwater side, the other one is traffic, and the other 2 are water and sewer. So the DPW has consultants that we work with to evaluate and work on any improvements that need to happen for our water distribution, which for us, the company I believe is Beta Group, and then for sewer, it's Kleinfelder. So those companies will be retained by the applicant. The town is not paying for that, to look at exactly where the connections are going to be, the impacts, and to make sure that there's adequate capacity. The critical thing too to note is, and I know that we discussed a little bit at the previous meetings, but we've discussed capacity, but the other situation that needs to be looked at, which the applicant really, I believe, is alluding to later on this summer, is if the connection points to the municipal system are figured out, we need to know what the impacts are to connect to those systems. So, if they're connecting to a sewer pump station, where are the pipes going? What size? What needs to be upgraded? Because the town is not going to be responsible for upgrading those systems. So, hopefully that gives you a little bit more information. But there's going to be a pretty in-depth conversation moving forward once Kleinfelder and Beta are able to dig into these plans. I think the reason why, I don't want to speak for the applicant, why they haven't moved forward with those is I assume it's because they're moving the scope a bit from 1,600 to 900 units. So, but yes, the DPW will be here at public hearings to comment as well as the consultants.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, sir. And I'll continue by asking the audience, how many people share those concerns? And again, that's pretty much everybody here. So, next question.
It's just a concern. I'm Diana Mendonca. I live at 80 Elbow Street, which is down by the entrance of where they're going to put the new, if they put the new entrance and move it down 800 and some odd feet. I live in an AE flood zone, just so you know, and my concern is always water. It's water every day of my life, even when it rains. They did have people, I don't know if it was your team, but they did have, I'm in a butter, they did have someone come last summer and check the water level tables behind my house, which is part of their land, not mine. And I went up to them and I said to them, listen, this is not accurate. We had one of the driest summers on the planet last summer. My stream behind my house, which is just a stream, I call it a swamp, is 4 to 5 feet higher than what they were seeing last summer. And so my concern is that I have a sump pump, it runs even when it just rains, it runs. So my concern is my foundation, my concern is the runoff of the water of that street that they want to build. Where is that going to go? Is that just going to go into the land? Are they going to have drainage on that street? So those are my concerns. And we do have noise. Anyone who lives on Payne Street, God love you, because I live on Elbow Street and I can hear it starting at 5 o'clock in the morning when the trucks come down. So, yeah, so it's the noise is there. And I'm just wanting to let you know that the noise is a huge problem. And if they move the entrance, the lights, are we going to be in 24-hour lit up like a parking lot behind the house when it was just, trees and quietness? Like, what's the barrier? Am I going to see all the cars? That's a concern of mine. So I just want them to know that when is that study for when they did the water table? Was it last summer when it was like no water and it was so dry and we were worried about fires? Or are they going to really do a study that has it when it's really wet, when we have water back there? That's my concern.
So when we get to the peer review with the water, we're going to bring that up again.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate it because
absolutely.
it is a concern of us and everyone that lives on my street.
Okay. Water, noise, and light.
Yes, lights, because the
That's-
road's going to go
I was
down
going
that
to
way.
ask, I agreed. I'm asking the crowd. How many people agree? Noise, light, and water. And there's the majority again, sharing the same concern. Thank you, ma'am. Next.
Hi, just kind of a follow-up question because you alluded to this when the gentleman asked, and I know it has been brought up about what is going to be the protocol or the rule or the whatever for keeping it 55 plus. So you said earlier that you've done these communities in the past or in other communities. So what are some of the ways that you've done it in other places to keep it 55 plus and ensure that that's what it is?
So this is something, and again, it's an ongoing discussion with the town, but, you know, by law, right now, as it's written, it has to be 55 plus. And we are willing to make even further commitments, and, you know, we are currently preparing something to share with the town, which will be made public, on, you know, that process. The 55 plus is not something that we can change. And I think it's incumbent upon us, and as we've made commitments to different stakeholders in this room, to show you how that is going to be maintained, enforced, and sustained. And we hear you loud and clear, and there's no intent to ever change that. And so, you know, there are lots of legal precedents and mechanisms that can, you know, ensure that enforcement. And, you know, we are willing, you know, we intend and are willing to adhere to all of those. And so, you know, we're continuing to work with the town to give all of those assurances that are possible.
So what are they? I appreciate what you're saying, but to me, that sounds like a lot of legalese. And if you've done this in other communities, what is the assurances? What have Quincy or Brockton or Stoughton or Somerville or whatever community, what did they have to do?
So, and again, this is something I think we can have a more detailed discussion about. I mean, it is illegal for us to put someone in one of these units, you know, that is not 55 plus, period. I mean, it is illegal. And in terms of how we certify that, obviously when the tenant first takes occupancy, there's a full certification process that we need to adhere to, that the tenant has to sign legally binding affidavits, you know, other mechanisms like that. I'm speaking generically at the moment. And then there's a recertification process that every year that comes up, that it has to be recertified and the same process goes through again. And, you know, it's, you know, again, there are other mechanisms we can add to further that, and there can be third-party consultants who can come in, you know, at the town's behest and you know, review our books and records and all the tenant rent rolls. But again, you know, that I want to be clear, that is what we intend to adhere to, and we will work with the town to ensure that all of those oversight mechanisms are in place.
And is there an on-site management
Yes.
office or person or staff that
Yes, the
helps
buildings will be.
facilitate that or any other issues?
Yes, the buildings will be fully staffed, 24 hours a day, and there will be a whole team specifically dedicated to certifying and approving the tenants.
And have you had issues in any of your other properties with this?
We have not.
So, ma'am, your concern is the definition of 55 and older plus living in these facilities and what that means and what the original intent was versus what they would like to do in the future, or what they will or will not define right now and will define in the future. Is that the concern that I'm hearing? Is that what makes up the 55 and what define, basically the definition of a 55 and older place and what we're going to have here? And what enforcement's going to play into it?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
I would,
Yes. And that concern, I think I would like to poll the crowd to see how many people are also concerned with that. And I see the majority of people raising their hand. So we will dig into that issue in future meeting, and it will be defined in a future meeting.
Thank you.
Or may I ask a follow-up question to that one, real quick, because it's the same topic?
If it's a different,
It's related, so I just,
Okay,
quick question.
I'll allow it, but I will also say that we are trying to hit topics one at a time and defining it by how many people in the crowd.
So it's not the same question?
But that's why I'm going to allow it. 'Cause you
Okay,
assured me
it's
it
just
wasn't.
related. My question is 55 plus defined. Is the person that is on the lease not necessarily their children, correct?
No, that's, and again, this is something we've discussed. The only occupants who will be allowed in these buildings are 55-plus residents. And they, well, in the way that we will enforce that is the only way into these buildings will be, key cards that are issued to those occupants on the lease, and that will be monitored. There'll be security in every building, and there will be, we understand, we've seen it before, folks who try, loopholes or sign it and then their kids live there. That is not what we want. It doesn't accrue to our benefit.
I'm talking about kids living with parents that are over 55.
So, as a technical, there are different hardships. For instance, if a, I believe, and again, we can get back to you with more specifics, but I know that there are hardship allowances. For instance, if a kid has to go live with a grandparent for some reason, and in terms of 55 plus with children, again, we can get back to you with all those details. But I want to be very clear, and we want to be held fully accountable to this. The intent is for 55 plus. That is what the town voted on at town meeting. It is because they didn't want there to be material impacts on the schools. It is because they wanted opportunities for seniors, both in Bellingham and surrounding areas, to age in place in an environment that, so many folks, retirement dollars and all of that are tied up in a house that, they would like to sell and move somewhere more cost effective, and that they can live here instead of having to move 100 miles away. And so that is the intent. I know that, we need to earn that trust and credibility. We are willing to be held accountable to that. I don't want to speak in absolutes because I am not a legal expert. I'm sure there are certain accommodations, so I don't want to say there will never be a single person under 55 that rests their head here for a night. But the intent that was voted on in town meeting is what we 1,000% intend to align with, and we are willing, to subject ourselves to any oversight and enforcement because it accrues to our benefit as well. We are aligned. We don't want, the last thing we want is, a empty nester couple who wants to be in the area because they have grandkids here living next to some 22-year-old college kid who snuck in there because his parents signed the lease. So that is, we are just as incentivized to enforce that as everybody else. And I understand that everybody always reverts to the worst case scenario and the bad apples and the bad actors. But again, as a fully managed, fully staffed building, the people at the front desk are going to know our residents. They are going to see everyone coming in every day. So in addition to formal legal, security enforcement with ID cards that, only this person can use this, swipe card to get in, there's also the human element of, there's going to be staff in all of these buildings. So again, your concern is well-founded, and I understand it, and it is not unreasonable. And I think, what we want is you and the town to hold us, and we want to work in good faith because we are not trying to engineer any loopholes or any trapdoors. So we want to work together to enforce that and to give everybody the requisite assurances, accordingly. So
I just want to clarify that you are now, and I think I heard something different in prior meetings. You are now going to basically say, with the exception legally allowed loophole, that this intent of this place is strictly to have 55 and older live in this place, and you're willing to have that conditioned in the final permit.
1,000%. And I think the only thing I will say is there are fair housing laws which I don't control. So I am sure that there, I am a civilian. So I don't want to speak in absolutes because state fair housing laws say certain things that can't be changed. But yes, to every extent that a private developer can agree and condition it, you have my word that we will.
All right, Rob, I want that note taken, and we're going to work on conditions of that going forward. And I'm sure our legal counsel will be involved with your legal counsel on that.
Absolutely.
Okay. I think that's a position change, so thank you. All right, let's go back to listen to some more concerns.
Douglas Smith, 10 Janet Ave. And I don't think, I've been there at that address for 30 years, and I don't think there are 900 homes in the directly affected area of Payne Street, Rentham Road. And we're talking about putting 900 more homes, essentially units, which is at least 1,800 people, which is probably 1,800 plus vehicles going on to basically back very small roads. So it becomes a ludicrous kind of situation. And there's one other thing I don't understand is that is with the town. I know in other towns that I've dealt with, Waltham, Shrewsbury, if someone had an approval, as you say, an overlay district, and they had approval for townhomes, 400 something or other, and that went belly up, that approval would disappear. And when a new proposal came, that would have to start from ground zero, over, in those towns, and I've dealt with it from the other side, shall I say. So I don't understand why the town even accepted going forward with this. But the idea that you're going to drop 1,800 vehicles, 1,800 more people as a minimum into that area is beyond ludicrous. It just does not make sense. And you know, there's too many things about this whole project that don't make any sense, including, which doesn't make any sense to me, they're talking about hooking up to Woonsocket sewer, and Woonsocket sewer is already overtaxed in federal noncompliance, can't take anything more, would need to be totally rebuilt. How could you add anything to it? It doesn't work now, which is dumping pollution into the Blackstone River and the Blackstone River Basin. So there's something wrong with this whole thing. It's beyond belief. Thank you.
God bless you.
So by a show of hands, how many people agree with those concerns? Again, the majority. Sir.
Fred Milgram, 703 Village Lane. As I said, I live in a 55 and older condo. At the previous two meetings, I heard you say that you weren't sure whether these were going to be condos or apartments. Has that been determined?
At the moment, the intention is that they are primarily going to be rentals. Part of the reason for that, and I will say, is that as we have explored both in this town and surrounding areas, a condo here with interest rates where they are, the monthly payment for a condo before expenses, landscape, snow removal would be over $5,000 per month. Our view is that that is not something that would be attainable for those who want to stay in this area. So our view is that from different folks we have talked to is that it would be much rather, if someone has a home today that they have a lot of home equity in, the challenge is if you sell it, where do you go? You buy a house down the street for basically the same price. So what we're hoping to offer here is an opportunity for folks who are 55 plus, who probably have a big nest egg in their primary home, to sell that home, be able to retain all of that cash, not have to go put a $200,000 down payment down and pay $5,000 a month, and instead move into a place that is fully amenitized, fully accessible in terms of allowing to age in place with services and ADA accessibility and on-site activities and all of those services. And instead of paying, having to write a $200,000 down payment and a $5,000 a month mortgage, be able to write something much less and, call it a $3,000 a month rent check and that's it. No other services have to be paid for in terms of landscaping, snow removal, all those things that everybody else, has to do themselves. And so our belief is that this is something that actually allows folks in this surrounding area who have been here for 50 years to stay here instead of having to go out to Western Mass or somewhere else, because the options here for 55 plus, are at reasonable, attainable prices in a amenitized, fully accessible, 2025 quality building for folks between 55 and 100. We think that this is a way to allow those folks to stay in the area in which they've lived and grown up and want to be in for the next 50 years and not have to leave this area. So
what do you propose that, an abstract number I know, but somewhere close, what would it cost for first rent and security just to get in?
So I think the corollary to that is what is a down payment for a house, which would be between $150,000 and $200,000 for a condo here.
You're not putting down $200,000 to move into an apartment.
I'm sorry. Well, especially for folks who are retired and on a fixed income, the banks aren't going to lend you, a normal size mortgage.
I'm well aware of that.
But so I'll just say to answer your
I've
question,
refinanced 5 times.
this is important. We likely are not going to require first month's and last month's rent. We view that this tenant base, 55 plus, I would hope there's always a few bad apples, but these are not folks in their 20s who are going to skip town and leave us in the lurch. So we would plan to have a very modest security deposit. I'm speaking abstractly because we're still
Well, that's all you can do.
several years away from that. But our view, in other cases, we've done just a $1,000 deposit or a $750 deposit. We really don't want to put anyone out with deposits. I mean, our view is if somebody's going to, leave us high and dry, then they probably have a reason to, and we're not going to chase them for 2 months' rent. We will take it and we will move on and hopefully bring a better tenant in behind them.
The other thing I was thinking is most people live not necessarily primarily on their Social Security, but a good part of it, excuse me, their income is a Social Security. Is there any way that your organization would sign in the lease that the rent will not go up any more than their net gain on Social Security? Because we get a Social Security raise of 3%. And if you're making $1,000, you got to give up $30 of it. And then Medicare takes $100 and some odd dollars out of that, which leaves us negative. But if there was a contract with the town that you wouldn't do that, overcharge the net increase in Social Security, would you do it?
As we sit here today, it's premature to commit to something like that. I think we appreciate your perspective. And again, I'll say, in terms of those who, believe or are more in favor of condominiums on this project, folks who are strictly on Social Security, no bank is going to allow them to finance the purchase of a condo here. And so
We're talking about a rental.
Yes, so I'm just saying, but back to, we believe that rentals provide a much lower barrier to entry for folks who are on Social Security. And again, every case is going to be different, and we're, several years away from the leasing. But, I understand your concern, but we hope that at a kind of conceptual level, we believe that rentals will make this more available to more folks, including those on Social Security and fixed income, whereas condominiums really would put a very, a tall fence around who could get in and afford a condominium. And so we hope that this makes it more attainable to those who want to have grown here, lived here, and want to stay here.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir.
Cost affordability for the over 55 crowd, how many people have share that concern as well? And I'll state it's the majority for the record. Sir.
Thank you. Cody King, Lord Lane. Thank you, everybody, for having me here. Nice to be here again. And I guess I just want to start off by kind of just echoing off a previous comment that was made. I appreciate the reduction in scope. Thank you. But I'm not going to sleep soundly at night until I see it in writing. So I would definitely like to see that. And I also have here for Mr. Lucier another collection of handwritten signatures that I can give to you. And yeah, that's all I just wanted to say. I want to see that in writing. Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Cody.
sir. This might be our last question, but sir, I turn it over to you.
Sure. Junior Ortega, 81 Glaw Lane. I'm actually on the Woonsocket side. I do have a couple of concerns. So first of all, let me start with directly for you guys, because obviously you guys, the city. The developer is a developer. Obviously, at the end of the day, it's a business decision, so they're in it, to make a profit. I understand that. But to the city, at what point in time do you listen to the voice of other folks in other meetings that have taken place, obviously against this particular project, to be able to say, you know what, this is a no-go? Because at the end of the day, are we just wasting the time and coming over to meetings and other concerns? I certainly believe that, obviously, not all of the concerns will be met, but is there a point in time that you said, listen, we'll listen to the voice of the people, and this is a no-go, like move on somewhere else, like find another piece of land, or are we just wasting time?
So I will say, I'll take that one. So we want to listen to your concerns. Okay, we want to hear all the different topics that we need to bring up over the next couple months, several months, could be a year. This is not going to be a process that goes quickly, okay? Because we are going to dive deeply into each one of these topics. There's a set of criteria in the bylaws that govern what we do, where the criteria, this is a special permit, so I will say that it gives the board a little bit more of the concerns are a little wider. I'll say it that way. That might be a fair way to say it. But they are in writing, okay? So there's a criteria. So I ask you to please keep coming. Please keep showing your concerns. We will go down into all those topics that Rob mentioned earlier, and there'll be separate meetings on each one of them. This is kind of a slow start. I think tonight was because we have a new board member, but I was expecting this one to, be a little faster as far as progression. But it will go. I would be surprised if it didn't go a year, sir. And obviously there was, depends where we go with it, but we will be diving into all these topics, and that's why we're taking the list of topics to dig down into. So thank you for coming.
I appreciate that, and then the follow-up will be obviously how close the project is, particularly when it comes to my own property. Again, I am on Glaw Lane, and just the proximity, how close this particular project will be to the back of my house. So obviously I'll be concerned, about the noise. I'll be concerned about the lighting. And again, the whole guarantee that it's going to be 55 plus. So to the developer then, if it's going to be 55 plus, I would assume then that the 900 units will be either 1 or 2 bedrooms and nothing else other than that, correct?
That's correct.
All right, so obviously at least, that helps, and that's good to know. But again, I think that the main concern will be the noise, the extra traffic, and again, the point that the gentleman made earlier, if Woonsocket sewer is already backed up, I'm just curious on how we're going to figure that out. And then even from an investment standpoint, at what point in time do you call it a day and say, you know what, this is just, way, too many millions of dollars for us to even go in there? Or are you so aggressive to the point that somehow you want to get this done, regardless of what the investment is? So thank you for listening. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Ma'am, the floor is yours.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Chris Spillers. I live at 602 Crystal Way. So I have a little bit of good fortune of living closer to the center of town than down in the area where this proposal is located. I've been a resident for 8 years, and about a dozen times over that 8 years, I've had to venture into Rhode Island, and my GPS has pointed me in the direction of Crook's Corner, and I get sick every time I think I have to drive down there because it is a nightmare already. So I can't even imagine what it would be like after you put in a development of this size. So that's just my personal feeling on it. You look at Facebook and all you do is see people complaining about the traffic coming down Rentham Road, down 126 into Crook's Corner, how dangerous it is. Someone was just killed there not too long ago. We've got people not paying attention to their driving. It's, to me, a development that size is just going to add. I feel bad for people who live on Payne Street when I have to drive on it and think, oh my God, I couldn't even imagine living on this road. The only other comment I'm going to make is I don't know what your rent is going to be. Based on what I see in the new development apartment complexes that are closer to me, just doing a little bit of math back there, you get someone 55 years old, lives to be 85 years old, just rent is $900,000 for the rest of their life. Most people don't even make that throughout their whole life, and people on Social Security are not going to be able to sustain living in a place that's going to cost them, what, $2,500 a month, and they haven't even eaten anything yet, and insurance and everything else. So I don't know how, I mean, I get what you're saying about people don't have to put a deposit down on another home by renting, but I can't imagine too many people over 55 being able to spend almost $1 million on rent. So that's just a little crazy to me. And my last comment is I have a few friends that live on golf courses, and maybe it's just because the times have changed and people want to get a bigger bang for their buck. But when you look at most golf course developments, they're single family or, duplex kind of situations, and not trying to jam 900 residences in such a small area. Thank you.
Thank you.
And affordability and density, I guess I'd call it. How many people are concerned about that? Right? And again, that's the majority. So, ma'am.
Hi, my name's Patricia Jolliger. I live at 80 Lake Street, which comes out to Rentham roadside of Lake Street. I'm afraid of this project. I'm afraid of what's going to come out of when people say they're going to do things. This is my second rodeo. I dealt with condos going in a golf course not long ago, coming right up the side of my house with a road that was promised to be finished. It's not. The sewer caps are still out this high. They were supposed to redo the road. I was supposed to have a gate so I don't have dirt bikes going there. And people, listen to me. When you hear the promises, you're not going to get them all. Trust me. I went through it already. 55 and over? Yep, that's what it was. I had the builder in my kitchen telling me 55 and over. You know what? They came back to our board that was going to defend this, got another application, and it's got their, they weren't selling them, they got their prize. They didn't have to have 55 and plus anymore. Now they're selling them? I don't know. It's not a finished project. When are they going to finish it? They've got an access emergency road permit that comes out onto Reservoir Road. Not finished.
So I don't, if we're talking about.
Beware, you're not going to get the promises. Check everything. I thought I did. Check it out. That's right.
So I think what you're referring to is the Bungay Brook development?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so that one didn't have a 55-plus restriction on it.
I had the builder, he flew up from Florida, in my house, in my kitchen, telling me it was 55 and over. He said, you come to me when you turn 55, which I had already, but he said at some event, you're gonna wanna buy one of these condos for like $600,000. Really? He's not selling them.
So I don't want to digress too much onto just a totally, I mean, the application in front of us is NECC, but I will just say that for Bungay Brook, those townhouses, it was never in front of the planning board for a special permit for a 55-plus application. I was not.
Well, that's what we were told.
If you were told by the developer, I mean, that's what the developer is telling you, but.
At the meetings it was said. I was at the meetings.
So that project was catered to 55-plus because it was a two-bedroom master suite on the first level for most of the most of the townhouses, but there was no restriction on the 55-plus.
Well.
And I will just add, too, that regarding the 55-plus, so I know we've talked about conditions, we've talked about affordability and such. So the overlay specifically for this application states 55-plus housing. So this board cannot contemplate any other housing that isn't 55-plus if they want to utilize the special permit criteria. It needs to be 55-plus. So the big question becomes, how is it going to maintain 55-plus? Because if the regulations state and the approval is for 55-plus, which is what it will have to be, how is that going to be maintained in perpetuity? Typically, for owner-occupied units, such as Bungay Brook, when you have a 55-plus restriction, it's usually handled by the HOA. That's typically how it's handled, and that's a very good security. The concern that I think, and I don't want to speak to the audience or the board, but the concern becomes with the rental units, how does that work? Because now we're talking about short-term residences, not long-term that are handcuffed by an HOA. So I know that I'm digressing a bit, but I think that's the concern at hand here. With that, that's up to the applicant to make sure that they document that for an approval by this board to make sure that they have the securities in place for the 55-plus. So I understand that.
I can't see how that can be controlled.
I think that.
I feel that they can have their children in. I had my mother in senior housing in Woonsocket. Seniors. Senior housing, we know what those are in Woonsocket, correct? Okay. There was a lot of people that were living there that shouldn't have been. So I don't know, and there's security there. So tell me how this is controlled so it's not under 55.
And as I mentioned, that's where the applicant needs to come up with a solution for this. So.
And my suggestion is we have to keep an eye on what's written and what's proposed and how they're going to do this.
I think we're in complete agreement.
Okay.
So.
Now, are they going to have like Section 8? Isn't that something that they have to go through too?
So.
They don't have to?
Rob, I can touch on some of it.
If you want to talk about Section 8, I want to just bring up an affordability component as well, but go ahead, if that's okay, Mr. Chair.
Well, I'll just say, Patricia, first of all, thank you. I think, unfortunately, your skepticism and cynicism is well-founded, because what you just described of somebody telling you one thing, then getting on a plane back to Florida or back to New York or wherever they are, and, with no roots or fabric around here, that has happened way too often, and you are right to be concerned. That I'm sorry that happened to you in one way or another, and again, I don't blame you for being skeptical of us.
Well, I'm skeptical because the project isn't finished.
Well, I agree.
And it's
again,
been many years, and it's like,
again,
they,
I can't comment on any other projects or any other developers.
well, what I'm saying is this going to happen again, where a project is started and they're like, oh, we're not renting them, so we can't build any more buildings?
Again, I think just as Rob said, we are fully aligned. All of your concerns, we want any loopholes that have existed, intentionally or unintentionally in the past with projects in this town or other towns. We want to be held to that standard. And Mr. Chair, you have my commitment. We will do everything we legally can to achieve that. And again, I know we need to continue to earn that trust and credibility, but I hear your concern loud and clear.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, if I may. See, this is the thing that we were talking about. These are all real people. These are people that live here. I don't think there's anybody, people don't want this project. And people don't want this project. But the reality is it affects a lot of people because there's a lot of bad taste in their mouth over a lot of things that, especially with the project she talked about. I think the confusion around the project that she talked about was the affordable piece of it. He had to require 40B, and he couldn't make enough money on the 40B condo, so now he's trying to put that somewhere else, the affordability somewhere else, to comply with what this board gave him to do, to build that, to get that zoning that he had to get. In this situation, it's twofold. And one of the things that we have to realize is that we're affecting people that live around this project. And I think the biggest thing, and I'm just not going to get on the whole rehashing what we already know and what the whole project's about, but the reality is there was a long process that went through that a lot of people thought what was going to be built in their backyard is going to be built in their backyard. And what was going to be built in their backyard was owner-occupied condos that will probably drive up value for everybody else because there's going to be a sale, there's going to be a purchase, there's going to be square footage, there's going to be comparisons. So that's what all of these people that you have here today with the concerns that you have are because of what was proposed in the overlay. And that is what you have here versus some of the other communities that you might have been in and done work in. So I know I'm going to give the benefit of the doubt tonight because I think it's deserved. You did take a dramatic chunk out of the project. And I think there's probably, maybe, hopefully, a little bit more of a chunk that you can probably look at going down the road of what can be built if you're going to move forward with this project. I think one thing I will say to everybody is there was a question about the overlay. I forgot who asked that question about how did it survive after the project was failed. You got to remember those things happen because either the Board of Selectmen have to do it or this planning board or that has to happen, or the zoning board to say this project has gone away. And quite frankly, it probably should have happened, but it didn't happen, okay? So you have it, you have this, and you have this project. And in all fairness to the planning board, you gotta at this point now, they have a long process, but under law, they're gonna approve a project or turn down a project. There has to be a process. Let the process go through the steps. All these concerns that all of you are addressing right now, traffic's going to come up first. The next thing's going to come up, and then at some point, conservation is going to get involved. All of these things are going to take a process. Right now, you just have a proposal, a look. They're trying to make things work. But again, it doesn't work until you have all these steps that have to happen. After that all happens, 4 of these people have to approve it. If only 3 approve it, the special permit doesn't get approved. So that's what the chairman was talking about with the special permit process. I hear everybody's frustration. I get it. I'm frustrated with it. But until we actually see and start seeing diagrams and actually start seeing things of what they're proposing and what they want to do and go through the traffic studies and put the input, after all that's said and done, it might even all sound great to everybody, but in the end, they can say no. After the applicant goes through all of that. But that has to happen if you want this project to go, either it's going to happen or it's not going to happen. But the last thing you want to have happen is that the process doesn't happen. Because if it doesn't happen, and the applicant uses their reserve rights and feels that somewhere along the line, the rights that are provided them by law, a lot of them were there before I even came into this job, whether I agree with them or not, it's a process that what would happen is this project can be totally taken out of your hands because you're going to let some judge decide it. And we all see how our judicial system is working today. And I also am going to warn you of one thing, not to get apolitical or anything like that, but these judges are appointed by the governor. And the governor has housing on her mind. So I can tell you, if we hear it, we see it every day as legislators, if you don't let them do their process, and you don't let this applicant do their process through due process, and they decide to go to court, and I'm not saying that's what you're going to do. Please, everybody, don't understand that. It doesn't matter. The judge is going to put it back in their hands, so anything they mitigate, if they agree traffic and they're going to spend $4 million on infrastructure to fix Payne Street and do what they got to do, all of the mitigation, whether they approve it or not, is all there. You could come back to a project that gets allowed and none of that happens because you didn't let a process happen. Just because a process happens doesn't mean the project's going to happen. I think this board is doing a very effective job listening and doing, and quite frankly, they're having public meetings doing this. When we did the overlay, these were more personal meetings, comment meetings, so that we could design the overlay the way you wanted it. Now you're in a public hearing process. So the process has begun, but we have to let it happen. And the last thing I want to say, because I know Mrs. Jelliker, and I know her very well, these are people, and that's what this is all about, and that's what this community is all about. And I think you're hearing it, I think you're seeing it, and I hear the people on the Woonsocket side. I think a lot can be done once this process moves forward to protect what they're not going to build on that side. But that's going to take the board, it's going to take zoning changes, it's going to take a lot of stuff to happen. But what I would say is just because the process is going doesn't mean it's on its way to happen. That does not, and the gentleman that spoke about if people don't want it, if it's not going to work, you're right. But the only way to allow that to happen so that we take the uncertainty out is you got to let the process happen so everything is documented on what you want. Because right now, it's all hearsay until you get into the traffic study, until you get into every section that the planning board is going to look at. Planning board's job, despite what other people might think, is, and many of you that are here, a lot of you know Jerry Mayhew. One thing Jerry Mayhew used to tell me, proper place, proper person. Those two things get defined. They have to figure out if all of those things fall into that. Proper place, proper person. And under law, if you can't get that done, then the project is just it's not gonna evolve. So I hear it all, and I think what everybody needs to do too is step back, because I think every time the chairman asks if somebody agrees, I think you're all going to agree with one another. There's no doubt in my mind that's going to happen. And as far as the over 55, I did a lot of studying on that with apartments. I looked into their projects that they have with over 55. And I'm not defending them or supporting anything with the project by saying this. The investigating that I did through the housing and to check on their over 55 status, their current properties that they have over 55, they're at 100% over 55, and everybody has lived there over 55 and was checked, double checked, and they constantly go through an audit to make sure that happens because they've had those agreements with those towns. There are certain circumstances under federal law and Massachusetts law that they would have to allow a certain situation if, for me, I'm going to be 55 in 4 years. I have a 14-year-old daughter. So there's going to be home from college. There's going to be things that are going to happen. So those things are going to happen. So I would just say, let the process begin. And what I would say to the developer, these are all real people, have real concerns. Again, this isn't Quincy. Again, it isn't Somerville. We hear all that. Because this is 17,148 people. We heard the population. It is. The population around us has grown tremendously. And a lot of our traffic problems are from surrounding towns, not our town. So, because they have to go through Bellingham to get to the highway. So, but I would say, just keep focused on these people because they are people. And they do have concerns, and they got to be the neighbors to whatever is built here. So that's the only thing that I would just say, and thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you for the comments. All right, I'm not seeing any other people wanting to talk tonight, and I think we're obviously will dig into a lot of these topics in more detail in the future. Rob, what do we got now as far as a timeline, as far as the next time we should go up to?
So, as I mentioned, we have a peer review scope. It's just not funded yet, so it has not started. So we want to give some time because I'm sure if we're going to be talking about traffic at the next meeting, we want a peer review, we want the consultant to be available, and we want the applicant to be able to look at that peer review as well so we can have meaningful dialogue that night. So I believe the applicant, you guys were hoping to meet sometime in August, I believe. So I will warn the board, we are getting busy with some applications. We only meet once in July and once in August. Right now, we're scheduled for August 14th. However, I know the intent here is to keep this specific meeting on its own agenda on its own evening. That's to help out. I know we have a larger audience than usual, and we don't want to keep everybody here until midnight for other projects that aren't related to this. So I would recommend, if the board is amenable to it, to meet a second time in August, if you're okay with it. What I would recommend is, the other thing too, I was alerted that there's going to be some significant improvements in this building through the summer. All of these chairs will be removed for a good portion, and they're going to be redoing the floors and ceiling in here. So with that, what I would recommend is we have 2 Thursdays that are not affected by meetings in August. That would be August 21st and August 28th. I would like to give us a buffer, since we're meeting on August 14th, a week buffer between meetings, so you're not stacked 2 meetings in a row, or 2 weeks in a row. So I would recommend meeting August 28th. The other item too, just to make sure that we don't run into issues with the improvements happening in this room, I would recommend that we have the meeting in the middle school auditorium that evening, which can accommodate almost as many people as this room. And it would be at 7 p.m. August 28th. So that is my recommendation.
Rob, can I just, you might want to think that, because there's no air conditioning in that auditorium.
I've been told that it stays pretty cool, so.
100-degree day.
Before we take a motion, do we have conflicts in August? That's real close to the holiday. Marty, do you have conflicts? Okay, let me ask the applicant. I believe the next thing you want to do is traffic, right? When are you going to fund the traffic study? Because that comes down, that's the bottom line of this, is that we're going to need several weeks, a month, at least a month after it gets funded for that to happen. So, I'm looking at the calendar, Do you have an idea of when you're going to fund that? Is there a reason it's not funded now?
I think, as Rob alluded to, the only reason is because, we have heard and endeavored to respond to a lot of the feedback we have heard in recent months. And obviously, there was a large change in the scope tonight, and that's something we've been, working hard on the past few weeks. I think now that we have presented it and committed to it, the scope can now be locked in with the peer reviewer, and we can fund that tomorrow.
Tomorrow?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Does that fit into the timelines?
Yeah, I think August 28th would give us plenty of time. If the applicant is okay, August 28th.
Yes, I think we want to strike a healthy balance. I know, as members of the board alluded to, we want to kind of, pick up, or again, I think, have more regular recurring conversations on this, so we don't want to let too much time pass. But I think given the seasonality and, wanting to make sure that the next meeting is that all of the work is done, we would be grateful if the board would be willing to host a meeting on August 28th. We would not want to intrude on anyone's August, but that would, I think that would be great, and certainly we'll be working hard the next 2 months to make sure that's as productive a meeting as possible.
Bill, I heard that you were going to make a motion.
I'd like to make a motion that the meeting on August 28th be dedicated to traffic.
All right. So what I'm hearing is that there's a motion on the floor that the next meeting is going to be August 28th at 7 o'clock. And it's been seconded by Steve. And we believe we've got the middle school auditorium lined up. So we'll say that that's the location. It'll be published as normal process. So we've got a motion. It's been seconded. Can I ask when the decision deadline is currently right now?
It's a special permit, so there is no decision deadline.
No decision deadline because there's a special permit. Okay. All right, then we've got a motion. It's been seconded, so we'll call for a vote. Liz? Phil, aye? All right, so that's unanimous. So I want to thank everybody for coming out tonight. I encourage you to keep coming out. We'll dig down in these meetings more deeply on different topics. A lot of them are going to be the ones we just talked about tonight. But stay tuned, and it's going to be a long process, but I encourage everybody to stay involved. So thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
And we are going to continue the meeting. We'll give everybody we'll take a 5-minute break right now because I know you guys are going to clear out.